The following episode of Happy, Sad, Confused was taped in November of 2023.
Everyone jokes about family, and like that's how I feel, you know. This is a crazy business, and to be able to go through 15 to 18 years with your group of people and to be able to, you know, just grow together, it's very special.
Prepare your ears, humans. Happy, Sad, Confused begins now.
I'm Josh Horowitz, and this is a happy, sad, confused watch-along. What are we watching? It's the Fast and the Furious movie that, sure, it was about family, but it was also about cool cars, a great location, and amazing kick-ass direction. That's why we have our director, Justin Lin, in the house to watch Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift. Justin, welcome to the show. Good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
How are you feeling? It's been a minute since you've seen this movie, as I understand it.
I showed it to my son, who's 14 now, but I showed it to him when he was, I think he was 7 or 8. Okay. That was the last time I saw it. So.
All right, so the memories are hopefully going to flood back, all the good memories. It's a movie well worth checking out again. I should also mention Christopher Nolan's very favorite Fast and the Furious movie. He's told me himself that, Justin.
Wow.
We'll get into that and much more. Before we get started, a reminder to the audience out there, if you're listening or watching on YouTube, you're getting kind of the highlights of this conversation. If you want the whole damn thing, if you want to sit with Justin and I for this whole shebang, go to patreon.com/happysadconfused and sit alongside us watching Tokyo Drift. All right, here we go. Okay, where were you at in your life and career when Tokyo Drift entered your life?
It was interesting because I had done, you know, my credit card movie, Bear Like Tomorrow. I went to Sundance, changed my life. And then it was about like almost a year of just taking meetings and not understanding what Hollywood's about until Nina Jacobson gave me my first shot at a studio movie. And I wanted just to try everything. And in the middle of that, I got a call from Jeff Kirschenbaum when I was in London about Tokyo Drift.
And were you, so you had just done Annapolis, which was kind of your first studio fare.
Yeah.
And what was your relationship to the Fast films at that point? 2 films into the franchise. Were you familiar? Were you into it or what?
You know, it was undeniable, the chemistry between Vin, Paul, the cast, you know, and just also just the culture, the car culture,
right?
You know, but it was an interesting experience for me because I remember when I was talking to the students and they were saying, you know, this is import, it's an Asian American thing. And then when I saw the film, I was a little bit like disappointed, you know, it's like, oh, so it was kind of very kind of tropey in that Asians have to hang out with, you know, Buddha statues and pagodas and it was, you know, and they were the bad guys. So there was an opportunity I felt like here where we can do something different, you know.
Was the concept there from the start? Like, because this was an unusual swerve for the franchise. It was kind of still figuring out what the franchise was at this point, obviously. The first film is what it is. The second film, you know, adds a lot of people to the mix, subtracts a lot of people to the mix. And then you have this one, which really still stands on its own.
Yep.
Really ditching like everybody, essentially, except for the Vin cameo at the end. Was that in it from the start? Were there any other permutations where other characters were from the previous films were in there?
It's interesting because when you know, Kirsch, who you know, he's now producer on the Fast movies, you know, he was an exec at the time and he tracked me down to my hotel room in London and I had read the script and I had passed and he tracked me down. He said, you just come in for a meeting, and I said, no, I'm good. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. And I think part of it was that, you know, the concept of drifting was awesome, you know, and taking place in Japan was great. And, you know, also just as a young filmmaker, you know, I was ready. I was prepping another movie at Focus at the time. And so when I read it, I was just like, no, it's not for me. And a lot of it was just the portrayals, you know, it was very kind of
just tropey again.
It was very also not only with the cultural aspects of a lot of the Hollywood film that grew up in where, you know, you're going to, you know, an exotic place and you're just exploiting all those exotic aspects. And what was really cool was that because I was saying no, when Kirsch asked why, I was just being honest because I didn't want to do it.
Right.
And he finally said, hey, why don't you come to meet Stacey Snider, head of the studio at the time? And he said, you can't say no to that. You have to take that meeting. And so I went in and I was just super honest on what I didn't like. And I think I was too young. I was just being very honest. And I remember she said, well, what if I let you do everything you're talking about? And I said, okay. And she said, the only thing is I will double green light this movie and the other movie, but you have to do this first. And
I think movie meaning another Fast movie or the other?
No, I was prepping another movie at Focus and that's part of Universal.
Okay.
And I think we were in the summer and we had to start shooting in October. So it was kind of a page one rewrite on everything. But it was so cool to get that kind of commitment.
Right.
That I said, let's do it,
What was the learning curve on directing car chases, giant scale action scenes like this, which this film is filled with? Now you have like dozens of these under your belt, but here you're learning as you go, I would imagine.
Yep. And it was the first time I, worked with the second unit director, obviously a lot of stunt and fight coordinators. I was just trying to keep it simple because when I did Better Luck Tomorrow, it was $250,000 for the whole movie. And on this movie, you're spending $250,000 before lunch,
right?
But luckily, I think the way I started, because there was no budget, I had to, basically storyboard everything for Better Luck Tomorrow. I kind of kept that approach here because I do love kind of committing to lenses, the visual language. And so that made the process of working with Terry Leonard pretty smooth because I was able to articulate everything. And it was first time using Previs. And Alex Vey, who I work with today still, that's how we met. And we were able to kind of sit there and really kind of design the whole sequence. And Terry was great. And they went and got it. And we were able to kind of seamlessly put everything together. I'd taken this amazing class at UCLA with Joe Russo was actually in my class.
Oh, wow.
This Polish director, Jerzy Janczek, and it was called a Fluid Master class. And basically you're trying to do dramaturgy. You're trying to break down the scene, and using a camera without cuts, you got to pick the lens and create the camera moves to kind of help motivate. And that was the best class I've ever taken. So I think I applied
that has served you quite well in your career, I would say.
No, and it really helps with the big action sequences because, those are opportunities for the audience to really kind of connect with the characters and the state of characters.
Do you remember much about the casting process?
Oh yeah. Movies of this size, usually the studios, they will have a list of, stars.
Right.
I wanted to go further. So I said, hey, can we have colorblind casting? And I remember they're like, why would you do that? Like, you're never gonna. And I said, well, I think part of it is like, it's for me, I just need to try it. But I remember meeting Lucas and thinking, because he's from the South, he has the accent.
Right.
And I love that quality. And he's kind of he's just not the Hollywood actor, And I love that
polished.
quality.
And that's
he's who he is.
Yeah,
I love that. And it really kind of sends his sense of an outsider, even in, in his hometown,
right.
in his home school. And so it was interesting because when we started, they sent him a dialect coach, which was confusing to me. And he came and he was kind of frazzled. And I sent the dialect coach away and I said, look, I will be the arbiter and don't lose your accent.
Yeah, this is why I hired you. Channing Tatum has gone on record saying the worst audition he ever gave was for Tokyo Drift. Do you remember his audition?
I remember his audition, and he was awesome. He's being I think he's just joking around. But I remember he came in, and he was amazing because I like to kind of play around and give adjustments. And he had a great audition. So, everything about my feelings on that audition was proven, in the last 20 years, obviously.
Now, was he one of your top three, though?
Yes.
Oh, he was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, okay, we've hit it. We're in Tokyo, which really
That's Shibuya. It's interesting because, you know, it's just a very different way of shooting. You know, they don't really give out permits, and people can actually, like, during the middle of the shot, people can just walk right in. It's very much about respecting the citizens of the community, you know? And so, like, I remember shooting this and people would just, like, walk in front of the camera.
Amazing.
Yeah. And the big Shibuya shots were interesting too, because, like, they have, you'll see the police officers and you kind of sit there and you just wait, and they're like, you get 20 minutes. And I'm just trying to shoot everything. And at 20 minutes, they come up and they're like, who's the director? And then someone steps in front of me and they said, I'm the director. And then they get arrested and they go to jail for me.
So I had heard that. Is that real?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, it was on, he's actually, I put him in the movie because he went to jail for me. So he's in the bathhouse. He's the attendant.
Spent a night in jail because you overstayed your welcome, basically, in Shibuya? Is that the idea?
I don't really even understand it. I just know that, like, somebody had to go to jail.
God.
And he did it for me.
Wow.
You know, we ran into a big roadblock because when we first got to Tokyo, it was interesting because I think some of the studio execs were they were like, we're Americans, we have money. And the Japanese were like, doesn't matter.
It's
Screw
not the
you.
way it works. Yeah.
And then they looked at me and they're like, wait, you look Japanese. I'm like, I'm not Japanese. And then they're like, you don't look like a director. And so I had to deal with that. But then what was awesome was that then I just decided, hey, we just got to take the time to get to know each other.
Right.
And I was just in Japan like a few months ago, and some of the crew are still like family. Like, I still see them and they're great. But I think you have to take the time, and I've learned this in the last 20 years because I've shot all over the world, is that you can't, as an American, go in there and just because you have money, you think you can just go in and start shooting. I think you have to take the time to try to really kind of respect and get to know and build the community.
It's a weird distinction because, look, the reason why we're sitting here today is there is a legacy to this film that, if anything, has grown over the years.
Yes.
But it is, you know, for good or for bad, it's actually, I mean, look, it's all the Fast films have succeeded, but box office wise, it's the least of them. But in approximation from the fans, it's become like one of the top 2 or 3, I would say, along with probably your Fast 5, I think, up there. Have you noticed that? Like, did you notice like a reappraisal or
yeah,
like,
no, I was shooting something and I had an actor, he was in junior high, and he said that night he was missing the dance, and it was a Tokyo Drift theme. And this is why it's so great to be sitting here with you, because, you know, you're always in the moment as a filmmaker and you're trying to do your best, but you just never know how the world's going to receive it.
Yeah.
And there's certain films, you know, like a lot of times I am airport and I get stopped by fans, and yeah, Fast 5 comes up, but the ones that are like really proud are Tokyo Drift
the real
fans.
ones. Yeah.
There's the really there's community ones, and there's and recently I think Star Trek Beyond's the other group.
I could do a watch along with that. I love Star Trek Beyond.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but like, I had Christopher Nolan on my podcast a few years ago, and I was just curious because, like, he has interesting taste that some might not expect. And I was like, well, you know, what do you think of the Fast films? And he cited specifically, Justin, Tokyo Drift as his favorite. Had you heard that before?
I didn't. I'd heard Fast franchise. I hadn't heard about Tokyo Drift. That means that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
It says a lot. What's your own analysis of why this one stands apart?
You know, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of times people can relate with these characters, you know, and I wanted to have an approach where we just create like a free for all.
Yeah.
And then we'd find the best match. You know, I think at one point, you know, Twinkie was supposed to be like Jason Tobin, you know, and, you know, and when I was working on the script, I had just met with Pharrell on something else. And the mentor character that I wanted in my head was actually, I was thinking maybe Pharrell can do it, you know, but it was actually part of the kind of open casting process. I had Sung come in to read the lead just to, I think part of it was just kind of expose him to the studio execs and everything. And I just kept sitting there, and he was reading the Sean role, and I just kept thinking, he should be the man. And so that's how
Oh, wow.
Han came about. And I was like, I know how to write the character now. It's Han. So
It's
that's how
funny.
it all came together.
It's funny. I was thinking that. I was like, thinking like, if this were made today, I bet the studio would be a lot more open, whether it's the right idea or not, of having Sung as the lead of this film.
Yeah.
We should mention here on a much more frivolous note, but it's important. I love the Hulk car, which obviously is.
Oh, it's my favorite. I remember going to Tokyo, and you go to the import car scenes, and it was just so random, and so when we were looking at it, it was, the studios always have these like promotional deals, and they had one with Volkswagen, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with the van for? So I saw the vans and that's Toshi. He's actually our tech advisor.
Amazing.
But I remember I was like, oh man, I'm gonna do it. And I loved The Incredible Hulk as a kid, the TV show. And there was an episode where they captured him, and he was trying to punch his way out. And I thought that the fist would be awesome coming out of the car. So I had this whole thing built. We had to get Marvel to give us the rights, and this is this is 2005. And the Volkswagen guys, they showed up on set, and their faces was just priceless. Like, what are you doing to our vans? But I loved it.
You probably have destroyed more cars than any other filmmaker in the history of cinema. You'd realize that.
Oh man, it hurts, especially with the classics. I gotta tell you the story. I was walking to set, because a lot of times when you have the hero car, and then we would buy 8 of them.
Right.
And there'll be ones where they're not in good shape, and those are the ones you cut up, and so you can use it as bucks for all the green screen stuff. And I was walking to set, and I saw this guy cutting the car, and I'm like, whoa, God, that's tough. And I'm like, wait, that looks like the hero car, and he cut the wrong car.
No.
I was like, there's one less Mustang in the world, and it does hurt me.
Oh my God. I think your leads, I'm not going to name names, so yes, I will. I'm sure Vin, I'm sure Tyrese, I'm sure the guys, they've commandeered some cars over the years.
Yes. Yes.
We just saw for a second there, Sung, obviously you're leading man through a number of your projects. Did it surprise you that, obviously we're going to get to it later, you kill him off in this one? And then that set off this amazing Justice for Han campaign. You brought him back.
Yep.
I assumed that was never part of the plan. You killed him. At this point, he was going to be killed. It was
Yeah.
just a one and done.
Yeah. It was. It's like I always say that every film we go Gattaca on it. Like we just do whatever we can, swim to that buoy, and try to figure out how to come back later.
I love that it's a Gattaca. I love Gattaca, and I love that reference. That's amazing. But that must, again, a thing over the years that must have tickled you to see the love for that character that folks wanted.
Yeah,
more of him.
it was amazing. Again, I was struggling a little bit in the character, and I think if I didn't have Sung come in to read for the lead, I don't think I would have. I don't know if I would have came to the conclusion that he would be Han.
Right.
And it was also kind of it was interesting because when we went through all the film festivals with Better Luck Tomorrow, Han, everybody just, because the way that movie ended, it was very open.
Right.
It was very open-ended, and everyone would ask, like, what happened to these characters? And so part of the kind of inside joke is that, well, Han went to Tokyo.
Right. Is there
Um,
any way to kind of like firmly like entrench that in actual lore? Can we like make that official here today?
I think it's official, but it has a little scale, like I like to think that, it started spiritual, but it's becoming almost literal nowadays.
Yeah.
Are you the friend in your friend group that maybe treats yourself a little bit better than everybody else? That's okay. I'm that guy too. You like to treat yourself well. Maybe it's getting that super expensive coffee once or twice a day. That's me. Getting the extra legroom on a flight because, damn it, you deserve it. Well, here's my question for you. If you're going to treat yourself to those kinds of things, why not treat yourself to the best options when finding a doctor? Your health is the most important thing in your life, bar none. Enter our sponsor, ZocDoc. It's the place where you can find and book tens of thousands of top-tier doctors, all with verified patient reviews. You heard me. Verified patient reviews. Don't settle. Go for the best and find the right doctor for you today. With ZocDoc, you've got more options than you know. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors, in-network, near you, and instantly book appointments with them online. Once you find the doc you want, you can book them immediately. No more waiting and awkwardly waiting on hold and praying that you get that appointment. You've got it. You're there. You're in. If I needed a doc, I would use ZocDoc. Go to ZocDoc.com/happysad. Download the ZocDoc app for free. That's free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/happysad. ZocDoc.com/happysad.
So obviously you went right into, I believe your next film was
Yep.
Fast and Furious, the fourth in the franchise. Again, was that just because the experience was so great here? Obviously Universal was happy with you. But again, a much different movie, kind of bringing the band together and kind of like that core group that starts to kind of really swell as the franchise goes.
Yeah. It's interesting. I did a little indie movie in between the two, and I thought I was done. And I was actually I was invited to do this like parade in San Francisco for the indie movie. And Sung happens to be in the car with me. And we stopped to eat at Arby's. And this is Central California. And I remember I'm ordering and I see him, and all these kids saw him, and it ended up being like 100 kids just. And that moment seeing that, I thought, oh man. And we got back in the car, we're driving back on the freeway. And I said, oh, it's too bad that Han is dead.
That was a bad
And
call.
Song, with his gene, he looked at me and goes, does he have to be though? And that was the first time I was like, oh, you know what? It doesn't have to be chronological. This is postmodern. And
Right.
I remember I had my flip phone and I called Kirsch, and because at that point I had decided I wasn't going to do another fast unless I could find a way. And somehow that moment just like it all came to me, and I thought, let's do it. The connection between all these characters. And so 4, that was the start of 4. And
Also messing with the timeline. Because wait, when this was made, was it understood that this one didn't necessarily follow the first two, or was that retconned a little bit?
I remember I got a call from the studio. They're like, that everyone's going to be confused. We can't have Han in it. And I thought, up to that point, this is a really interesting franchise because there's no IP, there's
Right.
no comic books or anything like that. So it was always a clean canvas, and I love that it can be anything it wants to be. And I thought, it actually would be cool just to do it with confidence, and you don't have to explain it, and they're going to figure it out.
Right.
And that was my argument. And, but believe me, the first test screening we had for Fast 4, I'm just sitting there going, oh boy, and nobody an issue. And it was such a great confirmation. I was like, sometimes I think, people get too nervous when there's too much money with the budgets and stuff. And they almost like are taking the viewers for granted a little bit,
Right.
or
Just tell a good story,
tell a good
entertain them
story.
for 2 hours, and they'll catch on.
And it was awesome that it was not even a problem,
Right.
and they all figured it out. And Fast 5 was great in that, again, we were sitting after the premiere, and we started talking about Fast 5, and I wanted to kind of go into more of a heist genre. And I don't know what, I was talking to Kirsch, and it was the Golden Girls.
Where's this going?
Well, because Tokyo Drift, when we were shooting this, I would always say, part of the joke I would say to the crew is like, what's Dom doing right now in the universe? Where's Brian? What do you think Brian's doing right now? And that led to the end of the movie.
Right.
And so when we did Fast 4, Han was introduced, he had a relationship with Dom.
Right.
And so when we did Fast 5, I remember as a kid, I didn't do a lot. I just play basketball and stay home and watch. I was a latchkey kid, and so Golden Girls on Saturday night was the thing. But they had Empty Nest.
Sure, I remember.
And then there the actor who played Archie Bunker was Into the Night, I think. It was
Carol O'Connor.
Yep. Okay. Mm-hmm. And one night it was called Hurricane Saturday Night, and it blew through all through, and it blew my mind that like they all lived in Florida, and it's in the same universe. And so when we were talking, I said, "Golden Girls," and Kirsch's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And I said, "This is the way to get all the characters back." Like, and I know that there was a lot of kind of, I think certain characters technically replace other characters, but they all exist in the universe, and there were some hurt feelings and things like that. So I felt like it was my job and to talk to Vin, talk to everybody to make sure that, we're a family. Let's own this instead of like, well, this person took over, let's bring everybody back together. And in doing that, like, I started thinking, God, what would be the end? We need a really strong antagonist, someone that's big enough to be able to kind of like go against the whole family. And that's how, the Dwayne of it all surfaced. And I remember sitting down with him and talking about Hobbs. And when he came on, I couldn't believe it. It was too good to be true.
It was good for everybody. It changed the course of his career too. Arguably, it was kind of like really injected life into what since has been this amazing run for him.
Yeah, and it was great. I think I feel like you have to earn you want to be in a situation. Sometimes I think with big budget movies, you don't want money to be the reason, right? You want to get in there, and when someone's saying no, you can organically and hopefully through passion convince them to a yes.
Right.
And that was the case with Vin doing the tag on this, and that led to Fast 4, and I think that was the spirit of this franchise, is to say, hey, let's sit down and talk. And usually, I'm being told by their reps, no way, and so you're like, can we just get in the room? Can we sit down and let's talk? And that's how we kind of built everything.
Well, yeah, and to look at where the franchise has gone, and like this, like arguably the best cast on the planet is now in this franchise, and it's grown and grown and grown. And you have to set aside ego at a certain point, because every one of these people can lead and has led their own film. And like, we all know, we've heard the stories, we see that, we've read the things. There's been drama on and off set for these things, and I would imagine it's kind of like part of your job that isn't necessarily always part of a director's job, which is like, you kind of alluded to this, you kind of have to keep the family together and be the peacemaker, because these are big personalities, and that's okay. But
yeah,
like,
it really, I mean, I'll go back to the fluid master class I took at grad school. It was the craziest thing, the Polish director, the professor, he would make us like do everything. You have to shoot it.
Yep.
And the one thing that I would never want to do is be in front of camera. He made us like have to act. And that little experience like made me empathize with everything that the cast has to go through. So yeah, it a lot of times it gets heated, it gets passionate, but you kind of don't want it any other way. Like you want the actors to really be,
invested and care. Yeah.
And to really they have a point of view that like sometimes as writers, as directors, like they're on the ground, they're actually walking and living and breathing it. And so, it's kind of, again, it's part of the fun.
Fast and Furious 6, which has a lot to talk about. We need to talk about the runway chase.
Look, we did map it out. It's actually 26 miles. 26 miles.
Okay, yeah. BBC calculated it as 18 miles. You're copping to it. It's 26 miles.
I went 20. I think we're going. I'm thinking of it going faster. So,
right.
Yeah.
13-minute sequence, 26 miles. Again, it's a movie. It's okay, right? Like,
I think of Altman movies when I think of Fast 6. So, like in that case, because I want to really kind of respect the ensemble, I like to think that I can have temporal control. So.
Now, I don't want to bring up a sore point, but there is a scene in Fast 6 that has become like an internet thing the last couple of years. It's the scene between Dwayne and Vin where they don't seem to be in the same physical universe. Justin, do you know what I'm talking about? Where they clearly their eye lines are not matching up in retrospect.
The at the garage.
Yeah.
Oh my god. No, they were there.
Wait, were?
I'm telling you, it was the craziest thing because that house is actually it's divided into 4 properties. So when they did the first Fast and Furious, they had to get all 4 properties to give them permission. Then they built the barn. The barn's actually not real.
Okay.
And so I remember we had to rebuild that for 6, and I got there and there was 4 different properties and nothing was even. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, like it was playing with my head. And so when Vin was standing there, it was like this kind of forced perspective that was happening. But it was actually because if you look at the ground, there were it was 4 different properties intersecting.
My mind is blown.
Yeah.
This is our headline.
I remember I was going into the, I'm like, wait, why is Vin head look so much smaller than, because at that lens, everything kind of was distorting, but I've never had it happen. And I remember going, I thought I was going crazy. Then I realized, it's the ground. It was, and I investigated further, and it was because that was the intersection of the 4 properties.
So that was not part of the beef. It was just happened to be there was a...
No, so by the time we did, we ended up building that house, a backyard on 9, and I told Jan, I said, we're gonna build it and it's gonna be leveled. That was my pride and joy. It was a leveled.
That's amazing. Wow. I'm gonna need a minute on that one.
That's funny that's a thing.
Oh, it's a thing. People, this is good setting the record straight because people thought it was part of the whole drama. It in fact is just one of those bizarre.
No, it was great. I actually, when we rehearsed, I think all 3 of us, we didn't want to do a face-to-face. And so we had them stand next to each other and it was great. Except I was running around. It was like, we actually shot in LA, which is always sunny, but it happened that we came from London, which was, you're fighting the weather there.
Right.
And then we come back to LA and it's worse. It's raining. And so I'm I remember sitting there and I'm trying to get the scene in the can and I'm like, what is happening? Why is it not working? And it was because of the 4 properties. So,
are you surprised, happy that Dwayne is coming back? That they figured it out. They're making it work.
I think for me, it's been 15, 18 years of my life, and we grow together. Like we have kids. Our kids are growing up together. I remember when I first met Vin to try to do the tag. I was told absolutely not. He will. And so somehow we were able to kind of get a meeting with him. And I was sharing with him about the characters in the universe. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to really kind of engage him in Dom in the universe of Fast.
Right.
And I remember I was sitting there and at the end, he handed me a Dungeons and Dragons book. And to this day, I feel like it was because of the care and the love that I think for us, we connected. And then you cut to 15 years later, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons with him and his family. It's like, that's Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
We're always trying to tell the best story. Our community, look, when I started this, it was kind of, the franchise was kind of in the gutter.
Right.
And so it was important that if we were going to kind of rebuild and this community, everyone matters. And, we don't take anything for granted.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the spirit of this franchise. And I think ultimately that's why I think it's kind of grown globally and I think generationally, as I'm finding out.
Yeah. So as you went to a very easy production like Star Trek Beyond, which had a script that, as I understand it, had to did you guys throw out? They wanted a new script at the last second.
I'll give you. So I'm shooting. I think it was True Detective in Ventura,
right?
And this is a Thursday, and I get a call, and it's J.J. Abrams, and he said, "Hey man, just curious, do you like Star Trek?" And I said, "Oh man, that's I grew up watching Star Trek with my dad. It has so much meaning." And he said, would you happen to have an idea for a Star Trek movie? And I said, aren't you guys in pre-production? He goes, no, we're shut down. And I said, what? And he said, well, if you have an idea, do you want to come by the office on Monday?
Oh my God.
So this is Thursday and Monday, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what would be the ultimate Star Trek movie? You know? And I remember I went and had dinner with my parents, and like it brought back so many memories. And so on Monday, I went down and sat with JJ, and I kind of shared with him the idea for Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah.
And he's like, great. And this is end of January. And he said, let's do it. But we have to start production in June. No script, nothing. And he goes, have you met Doug Jung? Do you guys want to jump on a plane and go meet Simon in London? And just like that, we're flying to London. And it was tough. It was the toughest thing I've ever had to do.
Yeah.
You know, that Simon and I and Doug, we joke about it now at the Soho Hotel because it was intense. I mean, I think I had quit 3 times and Simon had quit 4 times, and you know,
Just under the gun. It was just impossible. Like,
Well,
how can we actually execute this to the level we wanted to in these circumstances? It was
also we didn't know each other, you know, and
Thrown together.
I think
Yeah.
you know, for me, Simon Pegg is like, it was a dream to have the opportunity to work with him, but he comes from a very traditional process where like you write it, then you go, but I'm sitting there and there's in Vancouver, I have to start building sets.
Yeah,
Star Trek is not like Fast and Furious. Every idea that I come up with
It's gonna take
is a
3
build.
months to make.
Yeah, and we had no time, and so I was trying to like be supportive, and I feel like Doug was almost like the kid in the. I mean, he's just looking at us, going, oh, and we're great friends. I'm. It's one of the best experiences, and Simon is a genius.
Yeah.
You know, I love Simon and Doug, but it was rough. That first, I didn't know if we were gonna make it out of that first week.
Because you have to basically, you're like, okay, what's the setting? We need to like get the production designers making like what kind of planet are we going to? That kind of thing.
Yeah,
like, first,
and it
then
was
almost
it was
reverse
weird because
engineer.
I came in with kind of a loose idea of what the movie is, and so I had to start committing to building stuff.
Wow.
But then I understand Simon's frustration too, you know, because he's like, wait a minute, I got to figure out how I'm gonna tell this story. I think it ended up being amazing.
And the movie's great. I mean, it's remarkably considering everything you're saying to me. It doesn't feel like a lot of films can feel that. You can feel the chaos on the screen. You don't feel that with Beyond. to your
Oh no,
credit.
thank you. And I give Doug and Simon so much credit because they had to, like, believe me, I come from the indie world where the script is king. Then you make these big budget where there's never a script, you know? And so Simon was also doing Mission Impossible, and they got shut down. I think they're trying to figure out their third act. So he was you know, I could empathize with what he
Yeah.
was going through, you know, and also during the process, you know, he would act, and then we would get together on the weekend and write because, you know, by the time we got to Dubai, the third act wasn't fully written yet. And I had to tell the production designer, I said, just give me a 360 green screen. And so we're writing as we were going.
Not to mention, you also had this cast that I know that loved each other. These guys really
Unbelievable cast.
But
Unbelievable
also,
cast.
like, I feel like there was some. I mean, I don't know how true this was that like Carl was having thoughts of like maybe I'm done, maybe I don't need to come back. Like, did you again have to kind of become like the peacemaker, kind of be like assuaged their worries that like let's do this one more go around?
There was some stuff there.
Fair enough.
Look,
Okay.
at the end of the day, I was the new kid.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I had the same standing as like a Fast.
Yeah.
But I would say that that cast was unbelievable, and I think with Carl, I love working with him because he comes to set and he's like he 100% feels like it's Star Trek McCoy. I love that.
Everyone should feel that
And
way.
I would love, and I love that kind of like that sense of entitlement. And I wouldn't want it any other way. And I think that's what makes him so great to work with, but also you see it on screen,
Yeah,
you know,
it
you
is
see
amazing.
Bones.
Yeah.
And my dream was always to have Bones and Spock be together on their own thread. And so to be able to do that with him, you know, it really was kind of the McCoy movie. So
I love it. I love it. You've also like you've been attached to a lot of different really cool things, and obviously the way this goes, you can't make them all. There was Terminator. There was a Bourne Identity movie.
yeah, it was Bourne. Yep.
That was after Jeremy had taken over, and they were planning on doing another Renner one, right?
Yeah, it was after I left for Fast 6, and Donna Langley reached out and said, "What do you think about Bourne?" I was like, "Oh man!" And Renner's amazing. I mean, to this day, I still kind of miss, what we were working on.
Was that going to bring them both together, or was it just going to be Aaron Cross? Was it also trying to involve Matt in there?
I had some thoughts, but I think Matt was done at that point. Again, I had a great time working on the script and getting to know Jeremy Renner was again, like, it's the perk. He's just such a great guy, great actor, but just a great human being. I think in the middle of doing that, I think Matt and Greengrass, they decided to come back.
Right, that's what it was. Yeah.
Totally cool. Like, that's their franchise, and I totally understand, But I think the time that I had, I think back fondly, and
Nice.
I actually, there's some stuff in there that I hope to be able to bring to life in other
In a different
projects,
form,
because it was such a great time, working with Andrew Baldwin on the script and Jeremy. Like, just hanging out and talking his character was great.
Which iteration, because Terminator's been through a lot, was it one that we saw that you were attached to? Was that
I had an idea. I had an original, an idea that as a fan, I felt like it was always shortchanged.
well, it's okay now to spill. What was it, Justin?
I don't want to do the pitch. I felt like I was really excited about it, and I think there was like there was like an entity that owned it.
Right.
And I came on, and we were gonna do it. Then Megan Ellison, like, I think Universal and Warner Brothers were gonna bid, and Megan Ellison came in and like outbid them all. And it was also another one of those things where I think I met with Arnold, and then I sat down with James Cameron, and it was very clear to me that that's the creator. That's and so I felt like, okay, cool. Like, it felt very uncomfortable, like me
telling them
pitching
what
them.
to do with their
Yeah,
franchise.
and so this is kind of like the as a filmmaker, I always want to be respectful, and obviously he's the creator, he created it, and so after a few meetings, I just felt like it probably wasn't going to be the right environment. But they were amazing. Like, it's some of the highlights of to be able to sit with James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger
and talk Terminator for an hour. Yeah.
This episode of Happy, Sad, Confused is brought to you by BetterHelp. Well, the new year has come and gone, and it's a time of year when we all make those resolutions, and I think a lot of people get caught up in trying to remake their life and go extreme and really just like change everything all at once, when the truth is you're succeeding. You've found ways to better your life. And with something like therapy and something like BetterHelp, you can find those strengths and build upon them. Instead of just wholesale changing your life, build upon what's working and ditch those extreme resolutions and make practical changes that actually stick. If you're like me, you've benefited from therapy. It has helped so many people I know, and it can help you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, I encourage you to give BetterHelp a try. Guys, it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and flexible and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. They make it that simple. Celebrate the progress you've already made, guys. Visit BetterHelp.com/HSC today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/HSC. Give BetterHelp a try today.
want to give some love to this sequence, which is really beautiful. The nighttime drifting sequence is.
This is shot in Griffith Park.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah, and this is the other thing that is amazing. I think I got very lucky doing my first action movie with drifting. Because the drivers are so precise, they were able to get the design shots to a T, you know. And so, as I find out later, when you're doing like these car action, it just gets so intense and crazy. But the drifting of it all was probably the closest to all the storyboards and all the previs.
Was it a tough decision to come back for the 9th film? Was it?
It wasn't tough. It was, you know, I think we've all kept in touch. And it was just one of those things where I think at some point, I just had an idea and it was a simple call, you know, with the studio, with Vin, and, you know, we're back at it.
Was in the interim, I mean, obviously we had the tragic loss of Paul, and you were disconnected from the franchise, even though you're always going to be connected. You let these other, you know, others filmmakers had a crack at it and did their thing, and it kind of grew in different ways. It must have felt a little, I don't know, both at home but also a little foreign to come back into that kind of circumstance. Or no, I don't know. The loss of Paul obviously hangs over everything.
Yeah, no, Paul is such a big part of this family, yeah, you definitely feel it, you know. Yeah, no. I miss him a lot, and you know, he is one of those. He's one of the human beings where I think, you know, you sometimes, you know, I won't see him for a couple of years, but when I do see him, it feels like you haven't missed a second,
right?
You know, and so, you know, because of that, I feel like I miss him even more, you know. And behind the scenes, you know, he really was so special in kind of how everything, the chemistry and how we all kind of were able to kind of interact with each other. And he's definitely sorely missed.
What is the lesson learned from the Fast 10 experience, which obviously everybody can read about it? You were the director. You decided, which must have been a monumentally difficult decision. I would guess probably one of the most difficult professional decisions you've had to make, to leave this franchise you love as it was starting up production. I'm sure you don't want to go into detail, but what can you say about sort of that decision?
You know, I look back now, it's like a year and a half, and there's nothing but love, you know, for the cast. Like, I know everyone jokes about family, and like, that's how I feel, you know. This is a crazy business, and to be able to go through 15 to 18 years with your group of people and to be able to, you know, just grow together, it's very special, you know. And the studio has been nothing but like trusting, and this is something that's earned. And so it really just means everything to me, you know. I know that whether I like it or not, I am going to be linked to this franchise. So I'm always rooting, you know, even when I was away between 6 and 9, I'm always rooting for it, you know. And so there's nothing but positivity, you know.
Did you stay involved in any, like, I know you spoke to Louis when he signed on.
Yeah.
Very gracious of you. Have you seen the film? Is it tough for you to kind of go back and see that film, which was obviously a fraught moment in time?
It's all good, you know. Like I always feel like as a filmmaker, I never want to lose that perspective. You know, I want to be respectful. Like, what we do is a privilege, and we're lucky, you know? And so whatever drama, I'm just kind of bummed that it had to get out in the public.
Right.
You know, like, I like to keep things, you know, I'd rather have the characters speak for the franchise, you know? And so I think whatever happened, it shouldn't be important. I think whatever, and I was there, whatever they needed, with whatever Louis or anybody, I just want to be supportive. So I think that's the spirit of, you know, of that situation, but also just overall, that's important to me.
You're a class act, sir. Definitely. Could you imagine directing another one at this point? Would you entertain another Fast movie at this point in your career?
I've been around long enough now that you never say never,
yeah.
right? I never thought I was going to go back. I mean, 6, I really felt like that was a way out. And, I still remember having this conversation with Paul, and I think we were both at that point. We were both,
Fried a little bit. You're like, we're good. Need a second.
Yeah, it was interesting. We had this. He said, I remember having a conversation. He said, yeah, like if you're going, I'm going.
Wow.
And I was like, man, it means the world to me, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, don't put that on
He
me.
goes, no,
Come on, it's your own decision.
He said, if you're leaving, I'm leaving.
Oh, wow.
And then he called me, I think a week later, and he said, you do know how much they're paying us, right?
Like when you see this film, which is a very ambitious film, particularly for where you were at in your career. But if you look at the scale of this, then of course, compared to the later Fast movies, it's a relatively small film, which is kind of weird to say about a movie of this size.
Yeah.
But like, do you look at it that way? Or do you think back to like the young filmmaker who was like slightly in over his head, but just enough to like make it work?
It's weird because I think when you're doing it, you're just in it, and it's very myopic, And I think, especially I think when I was starting off, I was very, I love filmmakers that have a point of view and very subjective. So there wasn't a lot of stuff in the cutting room floor, right? It's designed a certain way to tell. And I think as the scales got bigger, I think, and also I as I matured as a filmmaker, I allowed myself to kind of experiment a little bit more on set. But I look back at this film and I actually kind of, I like that process because whether you like it or not, I am choosing a lens and I'm choosing the frame and move the camera a certain way. And sometimes you do kind of lose that a little bit. It's a different feel with the bigger movies. And I'm glad I got to try everything. And I think it's as we sit here now, I feel like I'm just hitting my prime as a filmmaker, And so I'm just excited that everything cut together because there was not a lot of coverage.
How do you accomplish something like this where it's like, I imagine this is where you have to get is this CG or is this another location masking for Japan? Because how can you possibly
This
stage
is
something like
downtown
this?
LA.
Okay.
And what I learned was that buildings are buildings. And
Throw a couple signs up.
it's amazing because it was like 8 city blocks in downtown LA. And I remember at 3 a.m. I would walk and it looked just like Tokyo,
Amazing.
But yeah, it was this is a small, big movie, I would say.
Right.
It's always a miracle that you can get any of these sequences done.
Yeah.
Because, you got businesses, you have, traffic that you're diverting, and you can't just like show up and do a couple runs. These are designed, you rehearse for months and months. And like the Shibuya, we actually had to build Shibuya in Burbank too. And just like, you had to get all the shots together.
Right. We're heading into the home stretch here. You mentioned, getting Vin on board. Like when in that process, was that being discussed for a while, or was that kind of like a late addition? Like, let's try to bring this other part of the franchise in.
It's interesting. You talk to different people. I'm sure they have different stories, so I can only share my point of view. And like I was saying earlier, like I would always joke on set, like, "Where's Dom now?
Right.
Where's Brian now?" And I like thinking in those terms. And I was looking for an opportunity to be able to somehow link up this movie to the universe. But every time I would, try to bring up that, I would just told, there's no way. Mm-hmm. There's no way.
Again, just because it's too complicated, he would never do it, etc. All this.
Yeah, they're like, he left for a reason. He's never going to come back. I remember I wrote the scene that's in now for Dom, but I actually had also written the scene with Brian.
Oh, wow.
And then I actually tried to write a scene with Dom and Brian. It didn't work at all. But it was really cool because in the process of working on those scenes, it felt like Han had a really a real connection to Dom, you know, like Two Outlaws. And it was cool to talk to Vin because it wasn't just me trying to sell him.
Right.
Because I actually had thought a lot about how they connected and their backstory and how that works into the bigger Fast universe. And you know, now that I know Vin really
that
well,
makes sense. That's his
we
language.
We spend hours talking about things that you never see on screen.
Right.
You know, and I think that's how we connected, and that's how he ultimately said yes.
Was he the dungeon master when you played with him?
Oh, it's awesome. He would do the voices, and I've never played, but I knew I was like probably like in the elite league of Dungeons and Dragons. So
that's amazing.
I was talking to on Star Trek, talking to Chris Pine, and he's awesome. He's one of my favorite human beings and great actor.
Yeah.
And I don't know I don't remember the consequence. He grabbed me and goes, "It's your duty to go make indie movies because you can do the fuck you want now." And I
that stuck with you, hasn't it? Yeah.
That is awesome to hear.
Yeah.
But also to be reminded that
Yeah.
you know, let's go and keep growing. And this is not, you know, you got to go earn it every time.
We all need a Chris Pine in our lives, reminding us what's important. In your day-to-day life, discover for whatever reason, they either recognize you or your name comes up and they're like, oh, wait, this guy directed 5 Fast and Furious movies. You must have some special moments of just like, these movies really mean a lot to people for a number of reasons. And that must, again, be a reminder of the unique privilege you've had. Do any jump out at you over the years of just sort of like meeting quote unquote regular people and hearing what it means to them?
It's happened to me many times at the DMV. They're big Fast.
I would imagine.
Fans.
Have you gotten out of any parking tickets thanks to the Fast franchise?
No, none of that. But DMV, I'm big at the DMV. No, it's like they recognize my name, and they're truly just passionate.
That's hysterical.
So it's great. And I don't know. It's interesting. Like, I think Europe, I get a lot more, like I'll be walking and people will stop and they'll talk, and airports, of course,
right.
I think is, but yeah, no, I always appreciate it whenever, you know, any kind of interaction with people that appreciate, and I appreciate the fact that they give us a chance, 2 hours of their lives to be able to connect.
And again, the real ones say Tokyo Drift. If you want to get your way into Justin's heart, you see him in the wild, go with Tokyo Drift.
That's the password. It is called Fast and Furious, and I think that, you know, what I like is that this film can stand on its own, and at the end, hopefully when the credits are rolling, you're like, wait, it's part of this other universe, and then it gets you thinking about maybe potential connections. And I think when he was talking about Han, I felt like that was something that was kind of lacking in this franchise, and I was so happy and excited to be able to at least infuse that, so that by the time we did 4, nobody had a problem that Han died in 3, you know. And also that's another reason why not having numbers behind like Fast 4, I think that was important. My only issue, if you watch, is that Fast 5, I love Fast 5, and it was supposed to be Furious 6. And if you watch a movie, it's called Furious 6, but when they put it in the posters, it was Fast and Furious 6.
Oh, okay.
So there's an inconsistency there.
That's your problem? Look at these titles. Your bananas titles, Justin.
Well, I'm like, we decided on Fast 5 and this should be Furious 6. And then so I did that for the film, but then on the poster it says Fast and Furious 6. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Whatever the result, I love that there's just a lot of passion, a lot of passion, and then we go at it, and that's how we make these movies.
Do you think there should be like a true finale? Like Vin keeps saying, like, it's like, we got 1 more, we got 2 more, we got 7 more. Do they need to end definitively? Does that matter? Or is it like, we'll just keep making them until, you know, the ideas run dry?
I'm only going to speak as a fan. I know I'm part of it, but I think when you going back to your question, one of the things that I really appreciated is that, you know, I've met people from around the world, and it almost feels like when, you know, these films come out every 2 years, you know, they go see it with their family, with their dad, with their, you know, and so, yeah, if it's sad to think that it would just end one day, you know, and like I'm all for, you know, let's keep going, you know, but I think that was the one thing that through all these years that connects, is that people have grown up watching this with their friends, with their family.
Yeah.
And I actually, that's actually an interesting question, because I never really even thought about it. You know, I know talk about final chapter, this and that, but I think living my life running into fans, actually that question now like makes me think that I don't see how I don't know how it
it's like killing a loved one actively. Like, why are you cutting this off when it means so much to somebody?
Yeah.
These films mean a ton to people for many reasons, and you are as involved, as responsible for as any human being in the franchise, helming 5 of these amazing movies. I'm so glad that you said yes to this one, and you said yes to chatting with me all these years later.
Thank you. And it's because it's Tokyo Drift, you know, it's actually really cool, because I'm about to kind of go do my first indie in over 20 years.
Wow.
And I think just sitting here with you, you know, this is such a pivotal part of my development, you know, and I again, when it came out, it was like, you know, the critics trashed it. It was not a great weekend. And to see it kind of thrive and be embraced, again, it just shows that, like, I think as a filmmaker, sometimes the fact that like I'm still around making movies 20 years later is exciting, but also seeing sometimes the films that in its time maybe didn't, you know, just was not
for whatever reason.
Yeah. And I think the test of time is that, you know, this is one of the few ones that I've done where I feel like it got like another life, and I'm always so proud for the cast and for the crew.
It's like a fine wine. It's aging well, as are you, sir. Thank you so much for the time. Good luck on your future endeavors, and let's chat about another of these sometime.
Oh, definitely. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man. Remember, if you want to experience the entire watch-along of Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift with me and director Justin Lin, it's all there for you right now on patreon.com/happy-sad-confused. Check it out.
And so ends another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Remember to review, rate, and subscribe to this show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. I'm Daisy Ridley, and I definitely wasn't pressured to do this by Josh.